Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Dr. Matt Kutz. He is a PhD in global leadership, award winning author, award winning educator, researcher, and speaker. And we'll be learning from him about how to develop contextual intelligence, navigate uncertainty, and build an epic mindset for lasting success. Welcome to the show, Dr. Matt.
Thanks for having me, AJ.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show, Dr. Matt. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll learn from you how to master leadership, embrace chaos, and become epic. We'll talk about all these things. But before that, let's learn a bit about your journey, your background, so that people know who they are listening to.
Sure. Thanks so much again for the invite. So my name's Matt, and I prefer Matt as opposed to Dr. Kutz. So Matt is fine. And so my background is sports medicine. I do a lot of work in healthcare, particularly dealing with sports medicine. And over the years, I have developed quite a passion for leadership. So I earned my PhD in global leadership. Not too long after that, I won a Fulbright scholarship in the medical sciences. So a Fulbright scholar, traveled quite a bit internationally, lived in Rwanda for a while, lived in Australia for a while, back here in the States. And during all those travels and all that time, I've learned a few things, met some incredible people in some incredible places, and which turned into a series of books. I've written many textbooks that we use in the university setting. And I always joke that, you hide a lot of good information in textbooks because no one really likes to read textbooks. And I realized that. So I started my hand at writing more professional books as well. So I wrote a few. Two I'm particularly proud of. One is called Contextual Intelligence. And back a few years ago, it actually was the Leadership Book of the Year award winner for innovation and cutting edge perspective. And we'll talk about some of that today. And then I also just finished a brand new book called Becoming Epic. And what that means, an epic then is an acronym or a mnemonic device that stands for be excellent, be perceptive, be inspired, and be compassionate. And if you practice those four things, then I suggest you have the capacity to live an epic life.
Absolutely, Dr. Matt. You put it very well. And if we look at the word epic, then a lot of people want to be, that traditional epic word. A lot of leadership want to be that. And that is where sometimes the problem is that you are trying yourself to become larger than life and losing out on the things on the ground, on the real picture, on the context itself, rather, So I want to understand in this whole context of, a lot of leadership is not talking about becoming human. And then a lot of people are in that traditional sense want to become epic.
Yeah.
How would you like to tell them, not your epic, their own type of epic? How would you like to tell them about your kind of epic and to become human in the right way, not their kind of epic? Help us understand, where is the problem with leadership? Is it about their own context? Is it about something else? Is it that they have just lost the way and there's no resetting or coming back? How do you look at it?
Yeah, great question. And I think one of the problems with traditional leadership thinking in general today is that it becomes about the leader. It's about me. It's about maximizing my impact, improving my bottom line, increasing revenue that I get credit for, all these things, which aren't bad things, but I think they put the priority in the wrong space. So two things that I like to talk about is how do we readjust ourselves to get back to the reality that leadership is first and foremost about making the people around me better. And so we start by understanding our context. Now, one of the things that I write about in Contextual Intelligence is this idea that we have a mindset about what leadership is supposed to be. And so we think about, I'm this type of leader, and no matter what situation we find ourselves in, we lead that way. I think that's a mistake. I think one of the things that's really important is every leader, or I should say every good leader, the leaders that do the best job and are the most successful, understand that the context that I am in dictates the type of leadership that I practice, which means leaders need to become very proficient at practicing more than one style of leadership, and they need to be very almost experts, or at least very proficient at different types of leadership behaviors. And to be quite frank, most leaders aren't. They find their way. They find this is what works. This is what always works. So this is how I behave all the time with everybody. And they forget that a big part of leadership then is reading or understanding or discerning the environment or the context. And then so that's where contextual intelligence comes in. We have to learn to be adjustable in that way.
Absolutely. So we'll come to your book, Becoming Epic, separately, but to understand the epic mindset,
Yeah.
contextual intelligence, 3D thinking. How would you like the world, especially leaders, to understand these things? Are these alien things, or are these something very inherent within us as human beings, but we just have forgotten it? We have become less human now.
Yes, I think that's exactly the issue. And in fact, one of the big feedback pieces of feedback that I get when I deliver keynotes or talks or workshops is I'll have CEOs and executives come to me and say, Matt, everything that you said, I already knew, but I never had a language for it. I never had a word for it. So things like 3D thinking, for example. 3D thinking is a major part of the contextual intelligence model. And what 3D thinking is the 3Ds are the 3 dimensions of time. So I talk about, not naturally that's past, present, and future. But how do we use that? How do we apply that as leaders? We have to make decisions every day. We have to evaluate opportunities every day. And anyways, the language that we use is, okay, how does my hindsight affect how I'm seeing this opportunity? How does my insight, which is the present reality of the situation, affect how I'm seeing this opportunity? And how does my foresight, where I want to go, where the organization needs to go, how does that affect what I'm seeing? And we need to recognize that all 3 of those time orientations are a filter through which we see an opportunity, a threat, hiring decisions, whether to launch a new product, anything leadership related, how to interact with my colleagues. We see it through those 3 lenses, and see what humans mostly do is they use one lens at a time. The mistake comes when we do that. We need to use all 3 lenses. And when we do that, we start to see something completely different than we did before. We actually have more valuable information. And I think that then contributes significantly to becoming epic, right? And then the epic part, which I love, is, those 4 aspects: being excellent, right? We have to have a solid track record. Doesn't mean that you are better than everybody else. It just means you're excellent. You've done the best that you can do. Then we're also perceptive, and that's where the contextual intelligence piece comes in, because if we're talking about 3D thinking and things like that, it's really about how we're perceiving the world. Are we aware of the filter through which we're taking in information? And again, I think a big part of successful leaders' mindset is they look at those 3 time filters: hindsight, insight, and foresight. And I think that's huge. And then, of course, being inspired. When we start to see things in that 3D lens, inspiration goes through the roof. The other thing that has to happen for inspiration, which is foreign for some leaders, and that's having the input of other people, even people who are lower. I don't know what metaphor to use, but are a little bit lower in the status, right? Kind of thing. Those people have inspirational insights as well that can help us. And then, of course, my favorite part of the epic model is the 4th part, and that's compassion. And we have to be compassionate because, again, you're not going to be epic if you're not helping the people around you and understanding what it is they're going through.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you speak at a lot of places, global leadership, and everywhere. You know about these things, and you talk about these things. A lot of leaders listen about these things, but do they understand about these things? Do they want to implement it? Can they implement it? Or are they the wrong type of people we are talking about? We need to have, just like a brand new product out of all the damaged products that we have. Means we can't get. Why I'm saying this is, Dr. Matt, is this. Let's look at you talk about the hindsight. If a leader looks at the hindsight, you will find a lot of not excellent that you talk about, excellent track record. You will not find that. You will find fudging in resumes. A lot of the people do that.
Yeah.
And thinking that fake it till you make it. Now, will that hindsight work? Will that sort of a leadership go beyond that? The present, it's all full of chaos, great resignation, quiet quitting, revenge quitting, and amidst all these things, imposter syndrome, they are struggling. So what insights have we got? They are not embracing chaos. You see the chaos in the name of work from home. So nobody knows where to go, which side to go. So earlier they said, you can go back home, you can work from anywhere you want, but now you come back to home. Not that there is wrong in changing anything, but you have not embraced chaos. You have shattered in the midst of chaos. And when you look at the foresight, if you look at the future, it's all AI. And then you don't know whether to keep humans or to keep bots. Where do you see the future of leadership amidst all this, Dr. Matt?
That's a great question. So this is fun conversation to have because, yes, leadership is evolving for sure. One of the things that I like to say a lot is years ago and in the past decades, leaders solved problems, and that's what we train. That was in our mindset. If you went through an MBA program, any formal leadership program, it was all about a leader becomes a leader because they know what to do. A leader becomes a leader because they know how to solve problems. They have experience, and generally more experience than someone else does, and that's what makes someone or qualifies someone to be a leader. Well, in the world that you just described, which some people will call a VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, or a BANI world. Some people will use that acronym as well, but we use the VUCA one is the one that I like. And what happens is the VUCA world actually alters reality from what it originally was. And the first mindset that any good leader has to embrace is that VUCA is here to stay, right? The world that we're living in now is not as stable and predictable and linear as it used to be. It's random, it's non-linear, it's all the things you just described. So if that's true, and I believe it is, then leadership has to change. How? How does it change? Well, we change from being problem solvers to question askers. And I believe that is the number one characteristic of a successful leader in a chaotic world. When a leader learns to embrace chaos, I think that manifests or it shows itself by a leader changing their mindset from being a problem solver to a question asker. Now, that means something also because now I have to learn a different type of skill to be able to frame the question the best that it can be framed, because the value that I'm going to get from my team now doesn't depend on me solving their problems. It depends on me asking the right question so that they feel empowered and equipped to be able to do it. And like you said, people are the hindsight is the most heinous, the most difficult one of the three aspects of time, because our hindsight lies to us all the time. We go back and we actually misremember the past. There's a word for it. Psychologists call it hindsight bias. And we have an incredible hindsight bias. In other words, when I go back and remember what happened 3 years ago, what I remember as happening 3 years ago actually didn't happen the way I remember it. And so how do we fix that? Because this is the biggest problem that I think we have in using hindsight, in that we assume that I can accurately discern hindsight on my own. The answer to that is you cannot do it. It is impossible to accurately remember the past without the help of other people. So in order for hindsight to be valuable for making decisions, we have to have a team do it. And we don't like that, because we don't like to have people tell me something different happened than what I remember. And this is where humility comes in. If we're going to truly be leaders, humility is a huge part of that. And it means, like I said, not being the problem solver. That's an ego thing. Leaders love to have that ego reinforced, right? And the best way to have an ego reinforced is to solve people's problems for them. We've got to back off of that. And I'm not saying that never happens, but I do think we need to back off a little bit and make sure that we understand my job primarily is to ask the right questions of the people around me, including myself. And I need to have people help me understand, okay, 3 years ago, we had a similar opportunity come up. I thought we decided this then, so why are we thinking about this now? Then somebody can say, well, wait a second. I thought that this was the reason we didn't do it. Oh, no. I thought this was the reason we didn't do it. And all of a sudden you're like, really? I never considered that. And when you have help with hindsight, I think it's the most valuable. So we want to be very, very intentional not to evaluate hindsight in isolation. We have to have other people help us with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Dr. Matt. So how does someone become epic? Are there any prerequisites for leadership to become epic? Because these present leadership, are they the right case to become epic or to have greater leadership? How do you see that? Or we do need to have manufacture a different kind of leadership stuff, and then that is where epic can actually be integrated.
Yeah, also a great question, because I think the current crop of leaders can do better. They can learn. Everybody can improve. Does that mean that they're going to have an easy transition? I think the answer is no. And the reason for that is, like we just talked about a second ago about the VUCA world. There's a generation of leaders, and usually they're the baby boomers. So like 55, 60 years old and older, generally have a difficult time with VUCA because they learned leadership under a completely different philosophy. Whereas the younger generation, and I'll just say 40 years and younger, or maybe even 30 and younger, tend to have an easier time at transitioning from problem solver to question asker. The older leaders are hard. It's hard for them to do that. So you said, is there a prerequisite? You asked if there's a prerequisite for being epic. And the answer is yes. And the answer is, you have to want to change. You have to recognize that what you're doing can be better. And I know that sounds simple to say, but let's be honest, there's a lot of leaders who really don't believe that. They might say it with their mouth in a meeting to their department or team, but they don't practice it. And that's really, we have to have a sense of honesty and vulnerability with ourselves. So that's a prerequisite. So once you are really vulnerable with who you really are, and you recognize that, yes, I need to make some changes in how I approach leadership, then you're on the road to becoming epic, because that's going to change your perception of what it means to be excellent. I make a big distinction in the book between being excellent and being perfect. Being perfect isn't possible, but being excellent is. And I think that's a huge difference. Being perceptive, We need to learn to see beyond our tunnel vision. And again, a lot of leaders with a lot of experience actually have more tunnel vision than a novice or a less experienced leader. And when you have tunnel vision, the first thing that you lose is your perception. You don't actually see everything that's out there to see. So again, that's why that humility is so important. And then, of course, inspiration. You're not going to be inspired if you already think you know the answer. I mean, there's just no, you don't have room for inspiration. So that in and of itself is important. And then having that inspiration piece is, of course, huge in learning to ask questions and creativity and innovation and all the stuff that comes with that. And then the final piece of being compassionate. Again, when we already think we've earned it, we deserve it, we put in our time, kind of a thing, then that diminishes our ability or capacity to be compassionate. And compassion is an interesting concept. And maybe this will be a good spot to kind of just to jump off here. But compassion is an interesting concept because in the word compassion is passion, the concept of passion. And com is a Latin prefix for with. So compassion literally means with passion, right? Now, when we talk about passion, we talk about the things we think it means, the things that inspire the heart, the things that get us going. And if you think about passion from an ancient concept, it really meant pain and suffering. We're entering in the United States here, we're entering into the Easter holiday, the Easter season, and we often talk about the passion of the Christ. Well, that wasn't a happy time. That wasn't a good thing. He went through an incredible pain and suffering. And so compassion means, you can literally mean with pain and suffering. It means doing the hard thing. Right. And so when we talk about compassion, it means doing the hard thing, which is putting your own ego, your own ambition, your own drive aside so that someone else can benefit. And that's really the final brick that goes in the epic road, so to speak, is I can be excellent and I can be perceptive and I can even be inspired. But if I don't do the hard thing and use those things to help other people move forward, then I might not be epic. I might be epi, I can be epi, but I can't be epic. And I think a lot of the leaders that I think you're alluding to in some of the questions you're asking, we have a lot of leaders who just aren't there mentally yet because they haven't embraced the compassion part, in my opinion. And I think that's what's needed in this next generation. And I think the younger generation of leaders that are coming again, there's always exceptions to the rule, but they have a higher probability of being epic to a new scale.
Absolutely. And those who do not, I wonder, how do you re-inject something very human as compassion? How do you do that? You can't bring, it's not like some sort of vitamins that you have lost and you have either re-inject or have it as a tablet or something. Can you do that? Can you reignite compassion in people who do not want to be compassionate?
Yeah. So of course, being an optimist and hopeful, I will hope the answer is yes. Right. But I'll be honest with you. It's hard. It's very hard. People who innately in their personality just have been so successful and they've told themselves for so long, and it's a part of confirmation bias, but they've told themselves for so long, the reason I'm successful is because I'm hard, I'm exacting, I'm to the point, I'm task oriented, and that's what leads to success. And of course, there's some truth in that, but that's also hindsight bias. You're misremembering the past, and chances are pretty high that it's not just what you remember as being as what happened is what made you successful. There's more to it than that. And so the answer is yes, you can, but also it's very, very hard, and you need other people. So the only way that I have seen work where that happens is the person, as we just talked about, they have to embrace humility again, which is another very difficult thing for successful people to do. But they have to embrace humility, and they have to go back and re-examine what actually happened. Now, just in a very practical example way, I'll talk about things that I did, like just with raising kids. So I have adult children now. And so with raising kids, and I'll go back and I'll remember something and I'll say something out loud, and my wife will hear it and she'll be like, "What? That didn't happen that way." And I'm like, well, "What do you mean it didn't happen that way? I remember exactly what happened." And she's like, "No, not at all. It didn't go down like that. It went down like this." And she has a completely different experience and memory of the same event. And then I'll talk to my children, who, again, they're adults now and grown and have their own kids and all that. And I'll say, "Hey, you remember so-and-so or this event?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, I sure do." And they'll tell me their version of it. And it's different from mine and different from my wife's, and then only when we all talk together do we actually begin to piece together what actually happened. And that's what it's going to take for these leaders who don't experience compassion. That's hard, because that's hard to do. That takes time. Right. And so that's that. So it can happen, but that's what it takes to do. You have to go back and remember. Okay. And think about that word, remember. So as in you're putting something back together, you're remembering, as the opposite of dismembering. See, our memories are dismembered. They're just random pieces, but to remember, is an important thing. We've got to go back and put the pieces together from everybody's different perspective. When you can do that, then you can begin to change the way you think. Now, I would like to think and believe that everybody can do that. But let's be honest. I mean, you and I are both reasonable people, and we understand that not everybody is going to be willing to do that, or necessarily might even want to do that.
Absolutely. And before I come to the book, let me ask you one more question. When you are talking about becoming epic, you also put in the word joy. What is the joy in terms of becoming epic?
Yeah, the person who lives an epic life has a tremendous sense of satisfaction in what they do, because you can have an epic resume, so to speak, and have done a laundry list of wonderful things, but be miserable, and we all talk about, or we've all heard stories about, the famous leader and the famous CEO who on their deathbed, and they're asked, "What would you do different?" They never say, "I wish I would have spent more time in the office." They always say, "I wish I would have spent more time with my family," whatever, something else like that. And so that's kind of what I'm getting at there, is you can have an incredible list of accomplishments, but if you don't experience joy from those things, and you're not getting satisfaction beyond a paycheck and beyond ego satisfaction, I would argue that you're not epic. The epic person does those things and also finds a way to cultivate joy in their life through the things that they're doing. So, and it's not just about happiness. I mean, I understand happiness to me is situation dependent. It's like, I'm happy because I've got a nice car, a big home, a lot of money, so I'm happy. I don't mean that. I mean joy in the sense of personal satisfaction, fulfillment. I'm content. I love what I do. I love the people around me. And I don't think you can be epic unless you can honestly say that.
Absolutely. And joy for whom? For myself as a leader, or for people around me? Not only in my family, but even in office.
Absolutely. Everybody.
So let's get to your book, your upcoming book, Becoming Epic. Who is this book for? Is it for the present generation of leaders? Is it for the future generation of leaders? Or is it for a wish for the future?
So great. Another great question. Of course, as a book author, when trying to sell books, you want to say everybody, it's for everybody. But I will be honest with you and tell you, when I wrote the book, I had my sons in mind. So my sons are in their mid to late 20s. Okay. So they're up and coming. They're in graduate school. They're learning, getting their degrees, things like that. And so that's who I wrote it for. I want this next generation to know, listen, there is a life you can have. There is a person you can be now and be happy and be epic and not have to wait till you're 60 years old. So the honest answer is for the 30-year-old and younger learning and engaging in the world. However, that said, I've had several people, read it and do their, testimonials, older experienced executives, and they were like, man, I wish I would have had this a long time ago. And they're finding some value in it. And one of the things, for example, just how I explained compassion. They always thought, well, they always equated being compassionate with weakness, right? And they realized being compassionate is not weakness. I can be compassionate if this is what you say it means. I can do the hard thing. I can help people around me do the hard thing. I can be encouraging and motivating to them to do the difficult thing and not have to say, do it because I said so, kind of a thing. And so I do think it has incredible value for established leaders and experienced leaders as well. But to your question, I did write it for the younger emerging leader.
Absolutely. And when is this book coming out? It's already out in the market.
So the pre-release will be available in about 2 weeks. So mid-April is when the pre-release will be available on the publisher's website. You should be able to find it on Amazon or any place really. Amplify Publishing is the publisher. You can find it on their website as a pre-ordered copy, and the original copy or the final copy will be available in August.
Absolutely. And for those people who would want to learn more from you, about you, get your help, ask you to be to be a speaker at their own event, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
The best way is my website, MatthewKutz.com. Matthew is spelled with 2 T's, but Matthew Kutz, KUTZ.com. And they can reach me there. They can watch videos, listen to other podcasts, all kinds of things there. And I would love to help out. And I'll put this plug in. I've had a secret desire for a long time to come to India. So I've traveled a lot. So I'd love to come.
Wonderful. Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.